So the new mandatory standards for 30 June 2014, I would imagine the most relevant would be the new set of consolidation standards. So the AASB have issued AASB 10, Consolidated Financial Statements, AASB 11, Joint Arrangements, and AASB 12, it's the disclosure of interests in other entities. So if you've got an investment in a subsidiary, an associate, a joint arrangement, or any unconsolidated structured entities, you have to provide information about that. So these bunch of standards, the consolidation standards, definitely one of the key things that is new for 30 June 2014. If we just look at key changes at a high level, in the old days, we had a clear and a very bright line on when do we have to prepare consolidated financial statements, when do we have to consolidate an entity. And the clear bright line was 50%. As soon as you've got more than 50% of the voting rights, or if you've got the right to appoint more than 50% of the members of the board, you would control and you would consolidate. Now we've removed, the AASB have removed that bright line, the more than 50% line, and it's now got a new definition of control. So a brave new world. Now in the old days, we also had a AASB interpretation 112, which looked at special purpose entities. And special purpose entities would have been if you set up a separate entity to do research activities. Maybe you don't even have shares in that entity. Maybe you've just given them some funds up front, designed a constitution. You don't have shares, you don't have board representation. How do we account for those? Now all of that is now moved into AASB 10. So when we look at consolidating, it's no longer a standard in interpretation, but all in one standard, AASB 10. The other one is AASB 11. In AASB 11, it's about joint arrangements. And when do we have a joint operation? When do we have a joint venture? And very important, and it really pains me to admit to this, is that the Australians have had it right all along. So when we first adopted IFRSs in 2005 in Australia, Australians said no proportionate consolidation of joint ventures should be allowed. Over time, the International Accounting Standards Board convinced the AASB that proportionate consolidation should be an allowed alternative. So in the past, if you had a joint venture, you could either use equity method or proportionate consolidation. With the introduction of the new AASB 11 on joint arrangements, that's all a thing of the past. All right, so we're going back full circle, no proportionate consolidation if you've got a joint venture. And that's one of the main changes in AASB 11. And then the third one in AASB 12, as I said earlier, a lot of disclosures, and mainly around your assumptions and your judgments when you decided whether you've got control over an entity or not, whether you have to consolidate an entity or not, whether you've got a joint arrangement, whether that joint arrangement is a joint venture or a joint operation, and either those unstructured or structured entities or old special purpose entities, whether you should consolidate them or not. So a lot of additional disclosures, judgments, assumptions. So high-level key changes. The application date, these three consolidation standards are applicable for years beginning on or after 1 January 2013. But for most of you with 30 June year ends, the first year that it's mandatory would be 30 June 2014, and that's what we're getting ready for now. If you're a not-for-profit, some good news. Finally, the AASB have thought, let's think about not-for-profits. Let's do a bit of additional research on not-for-profits, not just take the new consolidation standard and force it onto not-for-profits. So they've come out with an amending standard and a whole appendix to AASB 10, Appendix E, which looks at not-for-profit issues, and if in a not-for-profit context, whether you've got control or not within this new definition. Because it's taken them a bit of time to issue that guidance, they said if you're a not-for-profit, you only have to apply AASB 10 for years beginning on or after 1 January 2014. So if your not-for-profit have a 30 June year end, it would mean 30 June 2015. A lot of not-for-profits have a 31 December year end, therefore 31 December this year. So for not-for-profits, there's an extra year of grace to absorb the new definition and what it means. And I have to compliment the AASB that they've done this and that they've taken the initiative to think about not-for-profits in a special context and come up with some guidance for them. I have to compliment them because in the past I've been very critical of them for not doing that. So I'm happy to see that, and I hope they continue. I believe the AASB, and the reason for the AASB is to look after not-for-profits in Australia and public sector in Australia. Because the International Accounting Standards Board, they look after for-profits. Right? So the AASB have to step up and look after not-for-profits and public sector. So not-for-profit, as I said, there's Appendix E, you've got a year grace before you apply, and the new AASB 10 therefore. If we look at these consolidation standards in a slightly more detail, not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination,